Today I'm going to walk you guys through how to set up remote access for your site, as well as setting up email and texting out faults and data. The three things you're going to need are a wireless router, a computer that's capable to connect to the internet at the site, and your HMI for your system. The first step is you're going to want to go to the computer that's connected at the site, go to the Start menu, and go to Run. You're going to type in CMD. That's going to take you to the command prompt, and it should open the command prompt. Once in the command prompt, you're going to type ipconfig, CONFIG, /all. This is going to bring up all the IP addresses and information you're going to need to put into your router setup. Make sure you have a pad and paper. You're going to want to write down your subnet mask, your default gateway, and also your DNS servers, primary and secondary. And this concludes step 1. Next, I'm going to take you through setting up a Gmail account. It's going to be used solely for the wash. Make sure that you write down the account name, the email address, and the password. The next thing you're going to want to do is set up an email account that's going to be used solely for the site. I suggest using Gmail because it's quick and easy. Start out by going to gmail.com, setting up an account. It takes less than 5 minutes. Once you've logged into your new email account, you're going to go to the top right-hand corner and go to your account settings. Go to My Account, and you're going to want to change some of the security options. So under Security Checkup, click Get Started. You can just skip the first few steps. You're trying to get down here to disable access for less secure apps. Now since the screen's going to be sending an email out on an unencrypted connection, you're going to have to make sure that Allow Less Secure Apps is turned on. It will automatically be off when you start your account. So just click it over here and make sure it is on. Go to Done, Continue, and you can just X out of the screen and you're all set with the email setup. This concludes step 2. The next thing you're going to want to do is configure your router settings. Earlier you should have written down the default gateway number, and that's what we're going to be using right now. That's the IP address for your router. Open up an internet browser, type in your default gateway, and hit enter. The computer must be connected to the router at this time. Depending on your brand of router, there's going to be a different default username and password. It's pretty easy to find if you just do a Google search for your brand of router and asking what the default username and password is. I'm using a Cisco router right now, so there is no username, and the password is admin, all lowercase. Most routers are pretty similar to that. Click Login. All routers are going to have different screens, but they're all going to be fairly similar to this one. This is the static IP. It's going to be called Internet IP address. This is the IP address that your internet service provider should have given you. This is going to be the IP address that is used just for this site, and that's what you're going to be remotely connecting into later. So make sure you also write down this static IP address with everything else that you've written down so far. The other stuff you wrote down from the command prompt, you're going to be entering here. Subnet mask, default gateway, DNS 1 and 2. Once all the values are added in, you're going to find port forwarding on your router. Sometimes it's called NAT, other times port forwarding. Usually it's under some sort of gaming setting. All routers are different, but it's usually going to be called gaming or NAT or port forwarding. They all generally look pretty similar to this one. So you're going to create a port to be forward. I named this one car wash. For external and internal port, you're going to have 5900 and 5900. That is what the screen is going to run off of. If it asks you for protocol, you're going to be using both. If you don't have both as an option, use TCP. Under top IP address, this is the IP address that is going to be port forwarded. This is what you're going to be entering into the screen later. I suggest using 192.168.1.150 and make sure you check enabled. Most routers have a Save Settings tab at the bottom. Make sure you click that, and it says Successful. This concludes step 3. The next thing we're going to start doing is entering values into your actual HMI. So from the home screen, make sure you go to Setup, Miscellaneous, go to More, and make sure these two are enabled here, eStop fault and page faults. They can toggle between enabled and disabled. Make sure they are enabled. Then we're going to go back and go to the Email tab. At the top here, you can enable email data and email faults. Make sure both of those are enabled as well. And once you've entered whichever email addresses you want faults and data to go to, make sure data and faults is on yes for both of these. Now that you've enabled email faults and email data and entered whichever email addresses you want to receive this information, you're going to go to the IP Settings tab. Make sure it's under Specify an IP address, and you're going to enter in all these values that you had earlier. Under IP address, that is the one that I suggested earlier, 192.168.1.150. Your subnet mask, default gateway, and primary and secondary DNS you should have written down earlier from your command prompt. Once all of these are entered, make sure you hit Apply, and then OK. This concludes step 4. After entering in your IP settings, clicking apply and then OK. You're going to go to SMTP setup, and this is for email. From name, this is the name that's going to be emailed to you using the Gmail account that we set up earlier. You can make it whatever you want. From address, that's going to be the email we set up earlier. You should have written it down. Under SMTP server, if you use the Gmail account, it will be smtp.gmail.com. Under the port tab, you're going to want to put 465. Under the encryption mode, always use implicit SSL. There's going to be a drop-down menu here. Make sure you choose implicit. Underneath that, advanced encryption, make sure that box is checked. Under authentication, choose auth login. For username, that's going to be the email account, the Gmail account that you set up earlier. That's going to be emailing out for the screen. And the password is going to be the password that you wrote down for that account earlier. These have to be exact. Once you're finished with all that, hit OK. Now you can hit the back button, and we're going to set up texting. Go to the text tab. Under recipients, enter the numbers that you want to be texted out. Based on the carrier or your cell phone service provider, they all have different email add-ons. You can just do a Google search for Verizon or Sprint or whatever you happen to have. Just type in email to text and it'll give you the little tag at the end. For Verizon, it's at vtext.com. And under fault, make sure you change the no to yes. You should be able to hit test text, and it should send you a text within about 10 seconds if you set it up correctly. This concludes step 5. Once you've pushed the test text button, the phone numbers that are associated that you put in should have received a text something like this. It'll be from the email, because technically it's an email being sent to a text message, and it'll tell you the fault status of the wash. Also now, since you have e-stop faults enabled, you should be able to push your e-stop in, and you should be getting a text and an email saying there's an e-stop fault. In order to test data, you can go to the data screen, hold the email button down, and it should email you the packages and data for the day. If everything has been sent out correctly, you can go back to Setup, Miscellaneous, More, and if you want, you can disable e-stop fault and page faults again. The last thing you're going to want to do is download a couple of VNC programs. It's important to notice that you cannot connect remotely from any device that's on site that is connected to the actual router. To download Type VNC on a computer, laptop, or desktop, go to typevnc.com/download.php, and it should take you to a free download. Once the application is downloaded, there should be a shortcut on the desktop. It's going to ask you for a remote host. What you're going to type in here is the static IP that you wrote down for your site earlier, then a colon, and then port 5900. when trying to do remote access on your phone, it's a similar process. You're going to go to your app store, whether it's Android or iPhone, and download Real VNC, VNC Viewer. The icon's going to look just like this. It is free. Once it's downloaded, you can open the app, and in the top right there's going to be a plus button. That's where you're going to add your static IP address, :5900. Once you've entered that and hit connect, it's going to ask you for a password. The password for all of our color screens is 4T7A, all capital letters. And hit done. And whether you're doing this on a computer or your phone, you're going to be remotely connected, and it's going to show you exactly what the HMI is doing. You should be able to scroll around and do exactly what you could do if you were actually at the site. This will finish setting up text, email, and remote access.